Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And again, we are pre-taping ahead of our normal air date. And so not really sure what's going to be percolating in the news when the show airs on Monday. But I know we will still be reading about stories on police, Black Lives Matter, cops killing black people, and various and sundry stories along those lines. I'm sure Colin Kaepernick will still be in the news pertaining to those things. So, but you know what, Bob, Ray, let's just, before we jump into all that bad stuff, just pay pause and tribute to George Curry. Because George Curry passed a week ago, approximately.
Right.
And
from this taping.
Yeah, and George Curry was a long-time print journalist, worked in newspapers, was part of the NNPA organization. He was a member of the National Association of Black Journalists, and in his last editorial functioning, he was actually the gentleman trying to bring Emerge magazine back into fruition in an online venture. I've read a number of editorials and a number of tributes to him, but suffice to say that George Curry was a veteran black newspaper and print journalist in magazine and print who was always in the trenches, always fighting for professional journalism standards, always fighting for people of color and stories pertaining to people of color. You probably crossed paths with him a few times, Bob.
A few times. Last directly up at Columbia University, he was making frequent appearances. If he wasn't giving a lecture, he was attending a conference, or he was just supporting students and young journalists in one way or the other. And he was, like you said, a regular presence at NABJ. I remember one time he called me out. I had raised my hand to say something in the audience, and he wanted me to explain it further. So he actually had me get up on stage at Columbia University, and I was totally unprepared, but I was totally grateful for the moment he gave me to express my views in front of about 200 people at that time. So yeah, a major supporter of black journalists, and he'll be missed.
Yeah, and it's people like George who would still be writing the type editorials that deals with the perspective pertaining to what's high on our priority. We've been talking about the issue of police officers shooting unarmed people, primarily people of color. The last show we did that may or may not have aired, some of it did air, some didn't, was when we were talking about Corinne Gaines. Raymond, if I remember correctly, your take on Corinne Gaines was should not have had a gun with her child in her hand. Go ahead.
Exactly. I mean, she should. First of all, as I stated before, clearly the woman did not have to die.
Yeah.
The woman did not have to die, period. But also, what was she thinking? Carrying on with, first it all started with her two children in the backseat of her car when she was stopped in a police confrontation. Then it follows up with them coming to serve a warrant in her apartment, and she has her child in her arm, and a gun and a shotgun. I'm sorry. Stand up for your rights, absolutely. And go down fighting if you have to.
Sure.
But you don't do it with a child in your arms.
We'll go back and forth on
I know,
that,
we can
as
go
you
back
and
and
I
forth
know,
on that.
But I don't know, Bob. You were probably out of town when
I
we
was
did
out of
that
town,
show.
right.
But you probably followed up on
I just heard
the
I just heard it peripherally, but I had some of the same feelings in as much as it wasn't clear cut. I mean, when you're armed and with a shotgun, with it, like you said, you just described it well. It's a different situation. You've elevated everything. Now there's the chance of one death or the other. It didn't need to be elevated to that level. It was a bad situation to begin with, and it was kind of sad that it had gotten to that point. But I guess I sort of, I agree with you that it's not black and white.
Well, for me, it's black and white and clear cut, and I'll
Okay.
tell you why. A traffic violation, I don't care, it could have been even more serious than a traffic violation, but it's only a traffic violation. So why are you coming to somebody's house armed with SWAT teams and weapons because you want to serve a traffic violation summons? Let me finish. You've already escalated it by coming in a confrontational manner to serve a traffic violation. All right. So you see that she has 2 children in the house. Okay? So her boyfriend gets out with one of the children. She's still in the house with a child. So she may not be in the best frame of mind. She has a child in the house, and you're still trying to escalate the situation, and you're still coming with all kinds of armed folks. She has a shotgun, so let her stay there with her shotgun. Just say, all right, this is not a situation we need to pursue. We'll come back another day. That's not what their perspective was. Now, why are you firing into that house with a child present? Never mind that the child is in her arms. Why are you even firing into the house with a child present? Now, if she had fired her gun first, I could see you claiming, oh, I feared for my life, which is the usual line we get from police officers when they fire at people. I feared for my life. She did not fire her weapon. So why are you firing into that house with a child? And then you can actually see that the child is in her arms. I'll lay you 9 to 1 if that had been a white male with a child in his hands. They would not be firing into that house.
Of course.
If it's a white female, they wouldn't even be there with their guns. It's a black female and a black child, and so they're firing. Child could have been killed. Fortunately for the child was only injured. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you can put it on her for standing there with her child in her hand with a shotgun, but I put it on any police department that would fire into any space with a child present.
It sounds like it shouldn't have been.
It should have never escalated to that point.
Right.
But
we're
but
not
it
dealing
did.
with a armed robbery.
Right.
We're dealing with a
traffic
Absolutely.
summons.
Well,
it's ridiculous.
Okay, and how did it escalate to a SWAT team being outside of her door? They came to serve the summons. I assume the sheriff's department, as in most
Sheriff's
counties.
department. Mm-hmm.
She had a gun, threatened them if they came in. They called the police for backup. And as soon as the cops hear a gun, they're going to send out a SWAT team. Of course,
And
they always
quite
do.
frankly,
They should have never gotten there, but it did get there.
And quite frankly, nobody's going to wait for the first shot.
Really?
Yeah, well, when it's a black person in there, they're not going to wait for the first shot.
And that's,
They don't even wait for it.
unfortunately, you're correct.
We talked about this. Double incident, Houston, Texas, same week prior to Corinne Gaines. They had these 2 separate incidents. White guy firing rounds, doing all kinds of crazy nonsense. Black guy, maybe didn't even fire the first shot. Black guy dead. Mm-hmm. White guy, they talk him down.
Yep.
They disarm him. He is
video.
not dead, okay? And he has exchanged all kinds of rounds with these police officers. So you understand why I'm saying.
Sure.
Of course I understand, Eric.
There is, and I'm not going to blame Corinne Gaines.
I'm not blaming her either. I'm
not gonna
saying that
blame
there
her.
are things that she could have done to maybe have de-escalated the situation.
She was not in a frame of mind, from the previous stop, because
obviously.
she said, you
was
here
not
to
in the
kill
frame
me
of
and my
mind.
kids.
Right.
And I know you do that to us all the time.
And the
And
police-
why would she be in that frame of mind had she not seen incident after incident after incident of black people being shot by police officers? That put her in that frame of mind.
And the police
of
did
course.
not arrive in a good frame of mind because the SWAT team does not arrive to shake hands.
No, they don't.
And it's
They don't.
it's an unfortunate confluence
it
of
is.
really bad decisions.
It is.
Absolutely,
It
on
is.
everybody's part, indeed.
So the latest we've seen. Let's talk about the because I got an email from Dallas Lee Bell, the pseudonym for one of the media individuals who keep folk abreast of what's going on in their communities, and he'd sent out an email about a black male being very angry and responding to an article that was written about the local Yonkers and Mount Vernon police officers on their response to the Black Lives Matters movement. I think you called that one up, Ray. Is there a way for you to tell us what police
Department?
organ the article was published in?
It was Blacks in Law Enforcement of America is the name of the publication.
Okay, and there was an article published in that particular organ.
In that particular organ,
Okay.
apparently, yes.
All right, but the gentleman who was up in arms about the tenor of the article. Might as well quote the article so folks know what we're talking about.
Black Lives. In an article, an individual who was alleged to be a police officer named Chris Stiggs says that the acronym BLM doesn't stand for Black Lives Matter, but in fact stands for burglary, larceny, murder, and how a Black Lives Matter march in New Rochelle was, and I quote, a joke of protest. And I'm quoting directly from this article. And apparently someone wrote in and how Black Lives Matter was a joke, but he said,
I believe it
It's
was.
fine.
It was his name was in the headline, I believe, and I guess a family member of some.
yeah, I don't know.
Someone
Kenneth-
who
Kenneth
lost their
Chamberlain.
lives.
Kenneth Chamberlain. Kenneth Chamberlain.
We're quoting Kenneth Chamberlain angry response to that article, or not so angry, or
No, it just says Kenneth Chamberlain responds to racial Facebook post by Mount Vernon and New Rochelle police officers.
okay. So it's actually posted on
So-
Facebook. Oh, interesting.
The original, apparently.
But he claims to be a family member of someone who died
At the
at the
hands-
hands of police, and of course he's going ballistic over the way the Black Lives Matter movement has been.
categorized.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
this echoes what I've heard out of Milwaukee, out of Sheriff Clark. I'm surprised he didn't.
This article,
Yes.
not his
No.
anger. Okay.
Yeah, the article, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it reflects his complete lack of respect and lack of grasp of his own community and of the movement. A number of people have asked him about the movement, and he's responded to it as
The same way.
as vehemently
Yes.
as this person did in this.
With those burglary,
yeah, I mean,
larceny, and murder.
and murder. I mean, like I said, if I had seen Sheriff Clark's byline on this, on that police
that
sheet,
article, you would not have been surprised.
no.
Yes.
So it's a narrative that's being repeated by a lot of the people on the right. A lot of if you tune up Fox News, which of course we try not to do, you'll hear that narrative over and over again.
Of course.
That the movement is nothing real. It's just people who hate cops, and it's a narrative that sells to a certain segment, and because of that is dangerous.
Right, exactly.
One of the reasons why we have to try to at least bring some perspective onto who Black Lives Matter really are, the movement is because they're continually vilified by not just far-right fringe people, or not just whom I call whacked out semi-crazies like Sheriff Clark,
Okay.
but a lot of mainstream people, or pseudo-mainstream people, because the last over-the-edge mainstream person, your good old buddy Rudolph Giuliani.
There you go.
So as far as he's concerned, he and Sheriff Clark are on the same page about the Black Lives Matter movement.
Right.
I mean, yeah, but unfortunately, it's not really funny because that man has a platform.
Yeah.
Just like Fox News always gives Sheriff Clark a platform because they love to hear what he has to say. And so if someone, and God, I miss George Curry because George Curry would do an editorial that would really put this stuff into perspective,
Right.
okay? But if someone doesn't continue to push back against the Sheriff Clarks and this crazy type article about who Black Lives Matter really is and about the continuing problems that this country is facing because they don't want to own up to the fact that these cops are totally accountable less or unaccountable
Right.
for killing these people over and over. Which brings us again to a very interesting twist on that. So let's talk about Colin Kaepernick, okay? For anybody who's been sleeping under the rock, behind the waterfall over the last week or a few days, you may have missed the brouhaha that occurred when San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick decided to sit for the playing of the national anthem at one of the preseason NFL games. Now, I saw Bomani Jones, the guy who writes for ESPN. I may be mangling his name.
Okay, Bomani.
You know,
I know who you
Bomani's
mean.
his first name.
Yes.
Great, incisive, articulate sportscaster. Matter of fact, I think our buddy Dave Roberts may have been the one who hired him for ESPN.
You might be right.
Yeah. But he's a nice rising star. I know Dave Roberts had good things to say about him. But he's been on a number of shows talking about the fact that not too many people noticed or made anything about Kaepernick not standing when it actually happened. It just went by the boards. It's when a few people in the media asked him, well, how come everybody else stood up and you didn't stand up? And the San Francisco quarterback said what he said, which was, until the flag represents all the people in this country, I'm paraphrasing, until some people who now are getting paid leave are called to account for killing and murdering other people, I don't think I'll be standing. And once he gave that explanation, what's that phrase? It hit the fan, okay? People started burning his jerseys, and a whole bunch of folk were talking about if he, I think your guy, the guy who rhymes with rump, is talking about if he can't find this country, he doesn't like this country, he should go ahead and get out and leave. And then they went to the, okay, let's talk about how patriotic he is, or he's disrespecting the people who serve the country. You guys have to give me your take on how far off this response has been.
Yeah, the response to his actions?
Yeah, and the response to the response.
Well, you have to understand what caused his action. I mean, I agree with him 100%. I haven't done that. I go to baseball games, I still stand up when they do the national anthem because, you know, I'm a patriotic American. I believe in the flag. I respect this country. I understand his train of thought. He's got a national platform where when he does it, it makes a difference. The whole world hears it. And I think that that's very important. I think it's very important for public figures, especially athletes, because all the kids follow these guys, should make statements whenever possible. So I agree with him 100%.
Now, Colin is not the starter. He has a job at risk. He can be literally out of football on account of just not making the team, never mind this statement. So he's taking like you said, he didn't advertise it when he did it. He just went ahead and did it and gave a reason later. So this really comes from his soul. He's making a stand because he believes in it. And yeah, there's a risk he might not have a job.
Absolutely.
And that's not the important thing to him, though. That's not the essential thing, whether he gets that next big contract. It's whether he can make this one statement and let people understand what he's saying. So I'll have to give him a big check for that. Big, not money, a big check.
Plus side of the ledger.
Yes.
The interesting, the NFL, big patriotic football league. I mean, their halftime shows have jets flying over, and they have all kinds of. I mean, the NFL and their war analogies and their war propaganda lingo is they wrap themselves in the American flag. But it was interesting that the league said, we don't mandate any of our players to stand for the national anthem. I mean, it's not something that you could dictate anyway. It has to be a personal statement. And so, as one other commentator said, if that had been the NBA, they probably would have fired him and fined him, do whatever. But to get back to your point, Bob, Kaepernick, just to talk about his stand, he basically did a conscious stand based on his feelings. That's not to say that he's not a patriotic American.
Yeah,
Right.
indeed.
I do not ever want to negate the fact that just because Gabby Douglas didn't put her hand over her heart when they were playing the national anthem and got vilified for it all over Facebook and on it, that doesn't mean she's not a patriotic American. Doesn't mean her heart wasn't in the right place when that anthem was being played.
It means
There are
at
a
that
bunch
moment she was excited.
I think it doesn't matter why her hand wasn't
Right.
over her heart. It's not anybody else's business. Kaepernick deciding to make his statement that way, that's on him, and it's a personal statement that should not call his patriotism into question. What I'm saying is, he says the flag is fine, but it needs to represent all people. And basically he's saying we need equal justice under the law, and we're not getting equal justice under the law. He has all kinds of large dollars at stake when he makes that kind of stand. This is not something that you just do lightly. Whatever endorsements he may or may not have had, or may be possibly having in the future because of his good play or bad play, you know he's going to have a more stringent way to go to make this team if he's not already on the team, because he was their starting quarterback. I believe he's one of their Super Bowl quarterbacks.
Sure.
So he hasn't lost skills that they haven't deteriorated that much. But there's a lot economically at stake for this young man for doing what he's doing and taking the stand he's taking. So I want to commend him for having the guts to do that. I don't want to monopolize this, but you remember that story I told one time about deciding whether to shake Richard Nixon's hands or not when I was covering a story for ABC News?
That would
Here's
have
the
been
deal.
difficult.
I probably
That
told
would
the
have been
story
a
once
difficult
before.
one.
Here's the deal. I'm covering this thing. President Nixon's coming in. He's trooping the line. I've got my crew, but guess what? I'm right in the way. And he's coming down with the hands on the hand. And I'm going, I don't like this guy. He's totally violated the Constitution. He's done all kinds of stuff. Do I really want to shake his hands? And I look at him and I go, oh yeah, right. Forget him. The office he represents is the office of the presidency. I will shake his hand, not because I'm shaking Richard Nixon's hand. I'm shaking the commander-in-chief, who I will make believe is not Richard Nixon. And had I probably not been in the military, I would not have had the smarts to think along those lines. I would have insulted the office of the presidency, and I would not do that. So I shook his hand. All right? Now, that took a lot for me to do that. Okay?
I would have had the same
All right,
dilemma.
I
would have had
understand.
exactly
A
the
lot
same
of other
dilemma.
people would
But I would
have.
have done exactly what you did for the reasons
Got to
that
respect
you did.
the office of the presidency. Kaepernick is correct in making his statement as he's done. There are a whole lot. The loyalty goes two ways. When I was in the military, they taught all of us, you have to be loyal to your men if you want your men to be loyal to you. All right? And so loyalty is a two-way thing in a country. You have to be direct and honest and equal to all your citizens if you want all your citizens to be respectful and loyal to you. It's a two-way street. And I remember the stuff that we dug up when we were doing these documentaries about black men in uniform who could not be served in restaurants when German POWs were being able to sit down and eat. Okay? I remember black men being lynched in uniform when they came back from World War I because they had the nerve to want service. So when somebody like Kaepernick calls into question what this country has done to black people for 400 years, do not take it lightly and do not think that this man is just doing something that has no basis and no grounds, okay? We have done the documentation, we have chronicled the history of this stuff. People don't want to hear it, they don't want to deal with it, just like they don't want to deal with Black Lives Matter today. And Kaepernick is saying, you need to deal with this.
Right.
And he's taken that stand. So we got about 3 minutes. We can talk about a bunch of other crazy things that are out in the atmosphere, but talk to me about your guy.
Bannon.
Tell people when we say Bannon,
Bannon is
tie it to where it comes from.
Stephen Bannon is the CEO of or chairman, I believe he's chairman of Breitbart, the right-wing, ultra-right.
Oh yeah, I call it Breitbart, but that's okay.
Breitbart. It might be Breitbart.
Okay.
Breitbart. But I just wanted to read a quote because we don't really have time to get into this, and I can't find it right at this moment.
Okay, so some background, some background while you look for it.
He was paraphrased as saying that he wants to go up against Fox News.
Oh, no. Let's get to the heart of this. Breitbart is now a cover and an umbrella for the far right fringe crazies of America.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely. And this guy Bannon considers Fox News centrist.
Yeah, well.
So that tells you where he's coming from.
Yeah, right. Okay. But here's the key thing that we need to let folk know. All that craziness that Donald Trump has stirred up, that people are saying, how's the country ever going to get back to a sanity and a decorum and a civility? Well, by hiring Bannon, they have just stirred the pot to make it worse.
Right. You just said, you basically said you don't care about that stuff. A civility, decorum, we really don't care. We're
Let's
going to go
get
this
the
way.
neo-Nazis and the racists and put them into the driver's seat of our campaign.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. They have an editor, well, what's his name? Evgeny, I can't remember the man's last name, the editor for Breitbart, who he was banned by Twitter during the RNC for vilifying Leslie Jones.
Yeah, he was sending all kinds of racist,
right.
crazy
And
tweets.
he's the editor.
Yeah.
Yes, and he is the editor of this thing.
So he's the one who vets other people writing for the...
Exactly.
Astounding.
Exactly. You've read some of the headlines, which we don't have time to get into today.
Call up a couple. We got a minute.
We got a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
This is the typical Breitbart site way of dealing with stuff, folk.
Birth control makes women unattractive and crazy. Political correctness protects Muslim rape culture. Suck it up, Buttercup's dangerous faggot tour returns to colleges in September.
I like this one.
Which
Since
one?
I'm a tech guy. There's no hiring bias against women in tech. They just suck at interviews. I love that. We have about 30 seconds.
Khizr Khan believes the Constitution must always be subordinated to the Sharia.
Yeah, okay. That's some of the crazy stuff that's now front and center in Donald Trump's campaign, folk. This has been Media Watch, brought to you by the good graces of Manhattan Neighborhood Network and EVT Educational Productions. We didn't cover all the stuff we wanted to, but I'm Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And we'll catch you the next time.